All right. So, what do you guys say we go ahead and get started?
No.
No.
Ever.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
we continue this. I've been playing Gears Tactics lately.
I recently played Metal Gear Solid 3, and I cannot beat the final boss for the life of me.
Are you still in a dream?
She's so hard. Sorry.
Wait, did everyone stop talking or did my audio break?
Oh,
Audio
good,
broke.
you're still there.
Okay, good.
I panicked too.
All right. Who wants to intro this?
Hi, this is a thing that we're all doing. We know what we're doing.
Yeah, the title's down
Welcome
below. Once again, we're joined by TheRepeat.
That's me.
Yes, author of Miracle, which was the last fic we recorded as of right now on the most recent episode of the Unironic Masterpiece Fanfic Theater, which has been delayed due to current circumstances. We figured we would meet up again, explore some further discussions regarding both that and anything else that sort of comes up. I believe you mentioned specifically in our Discord that you had some things that you didn't bring up last time we talked.
Yeah. One of the first things y'all said was something like, "We prepared no questions for you." Just immediately, like, for some reason, I was just completely unprepared for that.
I think
I
we
was
should
like,
preface the
yeah,
way this
I'll-
came about, because basically, like, everything you just said, Nick, is basically everything there is to say. A message was posted in Discord, and we were all like, yeah, let's meet up again.
Yeah, why not?
And then, yeah. And meanwhile, Jesse is here. He's probably saying something right now.
No, he had his audio muted.
I don't know what to say. I'm panicking.
Yeah, really, the reason I wanted to do another one because I didn't get enough of Jesse last time, and he really just needs to talk almost the entire time.
Well, see,
I feel
that's
about
that's
that.
how he gets you, right? He stays quiet, so that by the time you realize, oh shit, I haven't had enough Jesse, it's over, and you want to come back.
See,
I know.
I can start monologuing, but I don't know anything about Fire Emblem except for what I know from Smash Brothers, and that's not helpful.
What else is there to know?
I mean, yeah, that's a good point.
I've played
I
every Fire
don't
Emblem game.
know.
Smash Bros. Sums it up.
I mean, Smash Bros. Is basically a Fire Emblem game at this
Look,
point.
Fire
Nice
Emblem,
meme.
have people you pick make fight other people you pick. Smash Bros, have people you pick make fight other people you pick.
Ether.
Same game.
And depending on the game, maybe you'll, like, touch people's faces a bunch to, like, I don't know, like, build
Don't
relationships.
talk about that one.
What?
I like the
You
game
know
that
that thing
there's
from
like
Pokemon on the
5
DS games where you poke your Pokemon and they like you more? Imagine that, but with people.
Yeah, that's Fire Emblem Fates. Hey, I liked it enough to write like 4 or 5 fanfictions about it, so it can't have been all bad.
Fates, that's Birthright and Conquest, right?
And Revelation, yeah.
Okay, see, I have Birthright, and I played probably 30 hours of it, and I didn't finish it, and I don't think I've touched
Wow.
it in a year and a half.
That's surprising. The game's not that long.
Yeah, I just tend to make these things take a lot longer than they should, because I don't
Yeah.
want them
I
to
guess
be
there is a
over.
lot of optional stuff to do. There's like level
See, I've
grinding and
just-
stuff to do in the castle, so I get
I've
it.
been playing 3 houses and been learning I'm just horrible about grinding, because I told this to Nick. I'm a simple man. I do not play these games as intended, I think, because my joy, I see the number go up. and then I
when the
clap.
number goes up.
I've been thinking about this
Big
so much
number
lately,
makes
like
me
why
happy.
Three Houses is so popular right now. It's got to be because it's the master of satisfying bar go up. Big
Oh,
number.
absolute.
That's probably a big part of it.
Yeah, because I was thinking when I was playing it the first time, I was like, man, there sure is a whole lot of not playing Fire Emblem in this Fire Emblem game. But I was still having fun, and I was like, because I love the whole.
Well, it's because every
number
time you do
become bigger
something, no
number.
matter how small, you get that little bit of progression. You just watch it. It's
Yeah.
measurable. It's there. It's objective. Number go bigger.
See, my favorite part of it all has just been how everybody is like alternately commenting on how charismatic Byleth is, while at the same time commenting on how dead-eyed and lifeless Byleth is.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a whole lot of people hating Byleth. I'm gonna put on the record that I think that having a silent protagonist like that had an awesome setup at first because it seemed like it was going to be important that he's silent or whatever. Then it kind of fizzled out. Like they didn't do anything with it. I was
So-
like, yeah, I get it.
Every
See,
time
I
we do one of
recently
these,
played Persona 5 The Royal with my wife, just kind of backseat gaming in the room because her computer's in the living room right now. She works there. But I played all of Persona 5 The Royal with my wife just in the background. And I think most of her enjoyment, the reason why she likes the main character of Persona 5 now, is because I spent so much of that playthrough impressing my own whatever on the main character.
Yeah, that was like when I would play Tales of Symphonia as a kid with my siblings. The game is voiced, but not fully voiced.
those are
For
the best.
cutscenes, yeah. So for cutscenes where they didn't have voice acting because it was unimportant enough, we would just pick up voices. It was
So
hilarious. We still quote those to each other today.
we made a few attempts to do some recording sessions of. Oh my god, why am I blanking on the name? Where's the
Is it
case?
Guardian?
Sakura Wars?
Soccer Wars. Thank you.
God.
Of
That
which
game.
like 5% of it is voice acted. So the three of us will be sitting, and we at one point we decided fuck the recording, we're just gonna keep playing it for a while. We decided to just obviously do voices, because what else are you gonna do when the three of you are playing a visual novel game with the occasional strategy mini game thrown in? And it's always weird when like
Tap
out
the
of
buttons
nowhere,
to clean the floor better.
yeah, for a line that has like no story importance at all, that you just wouldn't expect to have any meaning whatsoever, suddenly is fully voice acted by a professional studio actor who is sitting there in the studio by themselves with 17 layers of noise cancellation layered over them to make it as crisp and clear as possible. And it's like, what? She's telling me I dropped a bucket of water. What? So confusing.
Those
For the
Symphonia
record-
did that too, actually. There's some really important side quests, or even sometimes parts of the main quest that were really important that just weren't voiced for some reason. And then there would be some like bath scene where they're voiced.
No, come on,
Lloyd,
the bath
were
scene
you
is always
peeking?
important.
Oh, it was a misunderstanding. This is an anime-inspired game.
Your reaction to Nick bringing up Sakura Wars implies to me that maybe you have some passing familiarity.
Passing
I
familiarity.
noticed that.
Ships passing in the night.
Yeah.
I guess I can tell that it's either I hate this, I'm vaguely familiar with this and want nothing to do with it, or I spent way too much time on this and I never want to talk about it ever again.
It's the second
It's
one.
the second one? Okay.
I've seen enough to just be like, probably not for
It's
me.
the right decision. We're all being honest. It's the right one.
Because the game we were playing was the one that was on the PlayStation 2 and the Wii. It was my copy. It was a game I bought back in like intermediate school because I read an article about it in Nintendo Power, and I thought, hey, anime.
Well, and occasionally you get those bits where it's like it's clearly like a direct port, and they didn't put any real attention into making sure the controls line up.
Oh
'Cause
yeah,
there's, like,
if I was
one-
smart at all, because I had a PlayStation 2. If I wasn't an idiot, I would have bought it.
Well, there
on
are a
the
couple of mini
PlayStation
games
2.
where you on the PS2 you would rotate both thumbsticks in like the same direction or opposite directions. Well, if you have a Wiimote and nunchuck, you only got one thumbstick, which means your other hand on the Wiimote is doing it on the D-pad, and it just doesn't register your inputs at all.
They just made that motion controls.
Yeah, but there are no motion controls anywhere in that game at all. But it's not
It's
compatible with a classic controller, and it's not compatible with a GameCube controller.
It is compatible with a classic controller.
I tried;
actually.
it wouldn't work.
I will contradict that. I played it with a classic controller.
Then why didn't we do that in the first place, Steven?
I think I want to say the first session I brought it up, and then I think something to the effect of "screw that, why are we trying to be intuitive?" came up, and then we used a Wiimote and a nunchuck.
I do like to torture myself, don't I? It's probably my fault. Hey, we're here to
I
talk about
like
fan
playing-
fiction, right?
Yeah, this has been a great episode. Thanks for having me on.
We will see you next time. I'm sure you'll have plenty
Yeah,
to
see you
talk
next
about.
week.
Oh, it'd be such a baller move if you just left right now.
Big fic energy.
Oh.
So yeah, we're here to talk about more things. Namely, it sounded like you had some more things that you wanted to bring up about the story. And frankly, we're all too tired and too stupid to bring up anything intuitive. So I think we'll let you take it from here.
Sure. Oh man, questions again. Oh, what am I gonna?
We set expectations high.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
how can you
so-
match the last performance?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about some things like some fun stuff and some also stuff that like about motivation, my motivation and stuff. You know, maybe a viewer will see it and take it to heart and think it's nice.
Go for it.
I'll get to that later. Let's start with fun stuff. Did
Oh.
you know? You didn't know because I've never told anyone. Miracle was supposed to be like really short. Like I did say it was supposed to fit in one chapter, but like I don't know, 10,000 words tops,
And then it got away from you.
and then it did. But I had in my outline. Well, actually, I need to open my outline. Give me like 3 seconds.
Absolutely not.
My outline. I just I'm just filling time right now. Yeah. So I have part 3, which is the longest part, was originally very short. It was going to cover about the same amount of time, but it was called "With the Kind Balmese Couple." I see in my outline. She was going to be with an elderly couple, an old man and a woman. And I don't know if y'all have seen X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Yes.
I wouldn't blame if you hadn't. But it's kind of like the
Very-
old couple that
Very familiar.
that Wolverine runs into.
Yeah, I think
that
you're
have,
with
like, the
all
farm.
1.5 people who maybe like 25% enjoy that movie.
Yeah.
Dude, I love that movie.
you don't.
Look,
But yeah, it was
most
like
of
that.
it's okay.
That was how I had it in my head. And
I love the part where Will.i.am was there.
oh yeah, he was. Guy from Lost was a bit part. Yeah, but back to fan fiction. Yeah, so Miracle was supposed to be short, and it was supposed to be like a lot more cheerful. Like it was supposed to have this like hopeful tone the whole time. Like the elderly couple was going to be all spiritual and giving her sage advice, like Uncle Iroh, and all like, must look within yourself.
But then it went all Tales of Ba Sing Se on you, huh?
Yeah.
The leaf from the vine fell slowly.
Oh my god.
Yeah. It was like partway through part 2, I think, when like he was miserable about hiding on the pirate ship,
Mhm.
and I was like, I see how I could make this a lot sadder. Could I do it?
You had
I
one of those
debated for about
moments.
3.5 seconds and was like, of fucking course, yes.
You just look at your characters and think, I love you, I support you, I want you to do well in life. How can I hurt you today?
I want you to be miserable, please.
It's like I really wonder if there's something to that, and being an author and like the desire to not necessarily to see your characters suffer, but to maybe overcome suffering.
Yeah.
It does seem to be a very common approach to, if not, original characters, but character development in general among, I guess, fan fiction authors, because you don't see it anywhere near as much in popular media, because you overcome the thing. And...
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I spent my summer helping my grandmother clean out her like borderline hoarded house with her like 10 billion romance novels, and yeah, you see a lot of that there.
A lot of suffering.
Steven,
well, it's like because there's a reason on fan fiction and archive, like hurt/comfort is like an entire genre that you can like use to like find pictures. Like angst. Pictures. That's exactly the way to describe it. Because so many people like it's cathartic.
To
There
write
was a video I
especially.
watched recently from Folding Ideas that was talking about how fiction is sort of a way that we can explore ideas and thoughts and feelings, for lack of a better term, in a safe, sterile space.
Well, yeah.
So I think there's something to wanting to have characters experience sort of the things that maybe not that we necessarily want to experience, but that we want to believe that we can work through.
Well, and even beyond that, it allows you to experiment with and address ideas and concepts or maybe situations that you don't agree with or don't condone, but would like to present and explore in a new or interesting way, even if not to share with other people, just so you can explore it yourself, right? So then you get the argument of, well, just because it's in my story and it's something that I write doesn't mean it's something that I want someone to experience or have to deal with. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
See it as like it's more fun. Well, like you don't see that in characters suffering a lot in a Marvel movie because it's less fun to watch, but it is fun to write because in your head you know it's going to get better. Like I'm sure Marin is being attacked by a zombie monster right now, but later she'll meet Frederick and they'll probably hook up.
Yeah.
So I would counter with specifically with the Marvel movie comment. In situations like that, you do see it. It's just a lot of the time done through more visual storytelling. And not to get on the Marvel train and run away with that or anything, but I mean you have characters like Tony Stark, right? So the majority of his character's suffering was very clear and very, very much on display throughout the entirety of the series, but then was sort of, I guess, sarcastically dealt with and hidden behind your traditional Marvel veneer of humor.
For another example that didn't work as well, Black Widow Hulk.
Yeah. By didn't work as well, you mean didn't work.
They
Period.
tested the waters in an Avengers
I mean,
movie.
I wanted to be nice. I respect Joss Whedon and like 90%
to.
of his decisions.
Yeah.
Eh.
It's not like I don't like Marvel movies.
Right.
There's also, of course, things like runtime.
Right.
You
Yeah.
can't
No,
just let a movie that you expected to be an hour away from you become 85,000 words. I mean, 3 hours.
I was funny enough. You should mention the length of that. I was rereading Into the Outrealms, and I was originally going to go, I read up to this point, and that's all that was written at the time, so maybe I'll just pick up there. And I had the brilliant idea last night to start over.
Yeah?
And I didn't do it last night. I woke up this morning. Okay, I didn't wake up this morning. I woke up at 1, made lunch, watched TV for about an hour, and then read the first 15 chapters.
Wow.
Yeah, in the last 3 or 4 hours, I read about 15 chapters of that, and I didn't get caught up.
That's
Oh,
how
wow.
the fan fiction fix works.
That's just I don't read often. When I do, I go pretty quick. Because I was that kid that would sit there in like algebra or calculus just with a book under the table and doing my homework, but I'm also reading 3 books.
Yeah, that's like 90% of it, honestly. Chapter 15 is the longest chapter.
Is it? Okay. Well,
It is.
because
It's
the
like
reason I brought it up
22,000 words.
I think it's after like chapter 13. It's 12 or 13. There was a note you left at the bottom of the chapter that said, "Hey, this is now surpassed the length of my now second longest story, Miracle." And I'm like,
It's chapter 10.
was it chapter 10? Oh God.
Yeah, 'cause that was the longest chapter up to that point.
Oh, I feel like I read that like an hour ago. Oh, it's 20 to 9, huh?
It was written a lot longer ago than that.
Where the fuck did my day go?
2017, I think.
That's not that long ago. Well, yeah, because I think when I first read Into the Outrealms, it was like late 2017, early 2018.
It was a whole pandemic ago.
Wow. Yeah, if you can believe it.
Man, I haven't read this story since before the plague.
Oh god.
wonder if there's a single podcast on Earth that hasn't mentioned COVID-19.
You know what? We were one of them until about 10 minutes ago.
Dang
I'm
it.
pretty sure we mentioned it last time.
Was that a
I'm
thing
not
that was
100%
like
sure.
something we would have addressed? I don't remember.
We didn't like talk about it. We just mentioned it offhand.
Probably.
See, I think my favorite trend has been because everybody was getting demonetized on YouTube for talking about it.
Oh yeah.
So the Game Grumps decided to casually refer to it as the Backstreet Boys reunion tour. And then that just kind of picked up speed. So now if you ever like are watching anyone on YouTube and they talk about the Backstreet Boys reunion tour, now you know what they're talking about.
See, instead of getting excited about a Backstreet Boys reunion tour, now I'll just get sad. Thanks, Steven!
And now when anyone thinks of the Backstreet Boys, they're going to think of COVID-19. Talk about brand recognition.
You wake up one morning in 2021 and someone's playing Backstreet's Back and you start to panic.
Well, because that was like the first big cancellation. Because like the Backstreet Boys reunion tour got canceled.
Not true.
I
Slipknot's tour
didn't
got
care about-
canceled. I don't
like
know that.
But
for
like
sure.
that was the one that
why I
teenage
made
girls
that up.
cared about, Nick. That was the big one.
Slipknot.
Yes, Slipknot. Actually, I think
Sure,
Slipknot
well-
did cancel their tour because my parents were going to go to a concert like next week that was like the day after a Slipknot concert or something.
I was gonna go see a Broadway show with my wife, and then our tickets got refunded. So
I had
Like-
two major events to go to, but it's probably best that they got canceled.
I was gonna stay inside and be lonely anyways.
That's what I do most of the time.
stay
Jesse,
inside. Be
sometimes we
lonely,
stay
read
inside and be
fanfiction.
lonely together.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Inside and talked about fan fiction.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
We keep getting off topic. That's for the other
There's so
channel.
much to talk about. We got to catch up.
We do, you're right.
So I was talking about what we were talking about Into the Outrealms.
Mm-hmm.
So you finished chapter 15?
I started chapter 15. I got about halfway through.
Okay.
That's the Harvest Festival, I believe.
Yes. What's your favorite chapter?
So far, let's see. I don't know, the confrontation with what's his name? Between Priam and Ike, that was awesome.
Oh yeah,
that was really
that
well
part's
written.
great.
That was fun to read. The fight with Marth when they reunite initially after he goes to meet Algol was good.
Very fond of that fight scene.
So pretty much the last like 3 chapters have been fantastic. I mean, everything before that was great because it took like your writing quality and writing style from Miracle and just expanded on that in a generally lighter tone.
Yeah.
Definitely the last 3
For
chapters,
now.
I think. For now. Yeah, you can feel it coming.
Assuming I ever continue.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see, for sure. Won't say it's canceled, but I won't say
On hiatus is the key word.
hiatus. Yeah. Keep thinking I should write it because I do like it and I would love to see it finished. And I think about the other stuff I want to be doing with my time.
So you do the things that make you feel like you want to keep doing them, and if you decide later that you want to go back to something else, that's when you do it.
True.
I want to
Very
do this thing, but I
Yeah,
also
there's
want to do
not really
this
reason
other
for me to
thing
say it's
that
canceled
might
because
make
who's
money.
to say I won't have another day where I suddenly am bursting with motivation to continue hunt for Robin.
Another day when you decide to write 20,000 words.
Yeah.
It's like,
The hunt
I know
for the
what I'm
Robin
doing
October.
today.
Yeah.
Very quickly, I'm going to vacate my seat for a second because my recording space is basically in our sunroom and the sun is going down, and I didn't realize the lights are turned off.
Sun's getting real low. Actually, so there is something I did want to talk about, and that's fic length, right? So, and
Yeah.
this is not. I know I said that it sounded like a negative thing. I don't intend for it to sound like that.
I didn't think it was negative until you said it was negative.
Yeah, well, now it is negative. What do you think now, huh?
Hey, I'm back.
Okay, hi, Steven.
Missed you.
So how do you decide, or do you, when you sit down to start writing something like this, generally how long you think it's going to end up being, or do you go in just sort of planning to let it go? Because I know you mentioned with Miracle you were only planning it to be like one chapter, 10,000 words or so. Is that your usual approach to something, or do you generally keep a more open-ended outlook on it?
It definitely depends, because I was planning from the beginning for almost every other story I've written to be how long it was. Sometimes I would get through, like, for an example, Cold Feet is a Fates story I wrote, and I was surprised at the end that it turned out to be like 23K or so, but it was still almost exactly the length. Like, pacing of every scene was pretty much exactly how I wanted it.
Right.
So while the ultimate length was like, oh, okay, it's that long, cool. It's ended up being as long as I felt like it would be in my head when I was planning the story.
Right.
Stories in general are like that when I've written them. Like, to the Outrealms, a few chapters got away from me. Like the Harvest Festival one was about like twice as long as I expected. It covered every story beat I wanted to cover. I just probably should have split that into 2 chapters.
Well, from what I remember the first time I read that one, it definitely feels very organic. A lot of oh my god, Nick, a lot like the way that like Miracle felt. It chapter 3, the longest chapter in there. I still will argue that you made the right choice in keeping it the length it was, because it felt organic and it felt like beginning to the end it did hit all of the right story beats without staying too long on any of them in particular.
Glad you and everyone thinks that.
Everyone.
Yes.
There are no dissenting opinions.
Yeah. Chapter 15, I think, of Into the Outrealm. Well, I haven't written anything else with 15 chapters. So chapter 15, only chapter 15.
The only one.
I actually planned that the same way I did Cold Feet. Coincidentally, I actually didn't think of that when I brought them both up, because they're about the same length, and I structured them the same way. As both of them tell a story in a cycle, where it rotates perspectives between Cold Feet, Warren's perspective, then Leo and Takami's perspective, then the Retainer's perspective, then Sakura's, cycle through and through until eventually all their stories wrap up. It ends with Korn and Azura together at the end.
Okay.
That was the exact same structure I made for chapter 15, and I think that's why I want to say that's why it flows so well. But every time I stop myself, like, am I tooting my own horn? That is what intent was, to flow better, because you can feel, even if you don't notice it, and intuit whose story is coming next once you've been through a cycle, because you start thinking, it's been a while since we've heard from Brady, so
it's more about when it feels like you should revisit something rather than, well, it has to happen in this sort of order.
Yeah.
Okay.
It does happen in that order,
right? But that, I mean, I guess
not all the not all the subplots in that chapter tie into each other. Like, it's not like the order is very deliberate and the choice of every scene matters.
Right.
It doesn't matter, which is why I could pull off cycle story like that.
Well, and that speaks to good pacing, I think.
Thank you. When I have a character with a single protagonist, it's harder to switch perspectives.
Right.
Because I think there are 2 scenes I can think of in Miracle that don't have Imran as the focal character. End of part 4, when it first shows, hey, it's Crom and Robin.
Yeah.
It's awakening characters the audience recognizes, wave and say hi. It's if you saw The Force Awakens in theaters, it's when Han and Chewie show up and the audience claps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then another time was in the next. That was part 5, actually. I don't know how I mix up part 4 and 5 all the time. I wrote them.
But you've written a lot of things since then, so it's understandable.
Yeah. And then in part 6, when it's rapidly switching between Tom and Robin and Imran's perspective to make you think he's leaving at the same time that they're arriving, but it's actually separated by 2 hours.
Yeah,
a few hours.
that was pretty creative.
Yeah, I liked that. I think those are the only 2 times it wasn't Imran's perspective in the whole story. And for a couple times, actually, that I didn't end up writing. So I couldn't call them cut scenes. But there were definitely parts where I was thinking, cut to like Hendrik's perspective of this or whatever in part 7.
Mm-hmm.
Though on the subject of part 7, I was talking earlier about how it was so much shorter. It was going to end with part 6 originally. I was actually halfway through. It wasn't even like an early plan. My plan was to end at part 6. About halfway through, I thought of how I could do an epilogue to clear up things with there.
Well, I'm glad you did do the epilogue too, because as much as I think it could have stood on its own, ending in part 6, but part 7, it gives you a lot more time to sort of wind down and take in everything that's happened. Which, I mean, obviously that's the point of an epilogue, right?
Yeah.
But
Go ahead.
It didn't just seem focused on setting up for a continuation. It established what Emran's sort of goals were moving forward, and left that open to interpretation if you chose not to move on and read into the Outrealms.
Exactly. I'm very happy, I think, or like I feel like the story needed part 7 to work, as part 7 kind of rounds out her character arc. The whole lot of the story is her like dragged along. Even in the earliest drafts, my character arc for her was constantly getting dragged along, and finally at the end she has a spine to go and do something.
Right.
And her doing something is most basically going up to Crom and saying, I'm leaving now, and because I want to go on an adventure.
He's saying she has a spine. For some reason, now I'm just thinking of the rest of the story up to that point, except now she's in a wheelchair.
If you like wheelchairs, read into the Outrealms.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Nick, did you read Dissonance yet?
No, I didn't. Like I said, I don't read as much as I used to. Most of my reading is I've got 2 novels I'm working on that I've been working on for like 4 months now, and then when we do reading,
okay.
I haven't written much since my laptop decided to take an absolute shit, because I can't write at my desk. I have to do it somewhere else. And then reading fics for the review stuff, because most of the time, man, I get off work and I just want to like turn my brain off for a while.
Yeah. Reading is an ordeal sometimes.
Yeah.
Even if it's something not that heavy, it's forcing yourself to look at words on a page when you could be watching funny cartoon.
That correct. Yes, funny cartoon make happy smile.
Yes.
And then you're like, I will watch Avatar, and then you're like, oh no, I cry.
Yeah, I actually am rewatching Avatar.
I have 2
Don't
episodes
lie, Nick.
left.
You went to watch Avatar, but then you just replayed all of Halo again.
No, I did both. Sir.
Time for optimal experience.
It is. Like, okay, look. The media companies that I grew up with have decided that right now is the best time to release all of the things that I enjoyed at the same time as a younger me. That's not my fault.
Even a Half-Life game.
I know, right?
Keep crossing our fingers for that Mass Effect trilogy.
Just as long as they don't try to fix the Mako.
Sure,
I just don't want them to fix anything. I want Shepard's head to do a 360 every time he does like a moderate turn.
I've seen videos of that.
I know this is going off on a slight tangent again, but I still maintain that the best bug I ever had in the original trilogy, I was standing there in Udina's office in Mass Effect 3, and he's yelling at me, and then his eyes just slowly start floating up out of his head and off screen.
Sounds like he was a little outraged.
You know? Yeah, you always like looking down on everyone else.
Rage.
Anyway, back to fanfiction.
All right. Let's have a back to fanfiction counter.
Yeah.
Edit in a ding every time someone says that.
See, that would be great for the video, but
really
that would probably not go great on the audio end. It's more of a visual gag.
Just the sound of someone taking a long sip from whatever drink they're playing the drinking game with.
Oh, you mean me when I'm editing? I just keep my mic on while I'm editing. Every time I take a drink, you can hear it.
Nick live streams himself editing, but doesn't say anything or do anything engaging. Just occasionally
Sips.
takes a sip.
Starts stream and then minimizes Twitch.
Just don't look at the chat, nothing. Forget you have the webcam on, go to bed, wake up the next morning, you're banned from Twitch.
There's one little when you get a sub and you look at the camera annoyed and mute that laptop. That's
You just
And
mute
then
the
someone like
notifications.
flips the whole stream, and it's just like lo-fi editing Nick's to
Study and
too.
relax too. Every time I sip, it's like super distorted and lo-fi. It's like recorded onto a kid's play school tape deck and then played back through like some hi-fi speakers over my snowball.
That's the content people want.
Exactly. This is how we'll get the hipsters.
I was gonna say it's not the content people want, but it's probably the content they deserve.
It's the content I'll make. Whether they want or deserve it or not, it's what they're gonna get.
They want to deserve it.
Hey Jesse, do you have any questions? Anything you want to talk about?
I only read Miracle, and I don't know what to ask. I have no idea. I keep thinking about chiming in and saying something. And I'm like, I don't know. Crom's really cool. He has a sword.
That's cool. He does have a sword.
Jesse's just
Sword.
happy to be here.
You know.
We're happy to have you here, Jesse. That's why you're our special
The
guest.
protagonist in the series to start with his legendary weapon as soon as you get him.
Oh shit, you're right.
Yeah. Second closest is Corrin, but you get that in chapter 5.
I hadn't thought about that.
And Byleth, I mean, I don't remember what chapter. It's probably like 4 or 3, but it's like 20 hours into the game.
Oh,
so.
when you get the sword? No, it's... Well, okay,
The
I
sword
guess
I
because
never
it's like
use
the,
because
it's
I
the
never wanna
4th or
rest.
5th month, yeah.
Yeah.
You're resting.
Resting is
Why?
a waste of time.
Just make it come back between fights. Give me less charges. I'll use it way more. Which is the point, I know. I don't want you to use it all the time.
Yeah.
See, the funny thing about our dynamic, because like when we're not recording, Jesse's probably the most likable, like generally, out of us. And this is probably reflected in like every like tabletop game we play. Jesse always ends up being the protagonist. Probably because he's the least likely to do something stupid and die.
Well, it just works out.
Little peek behind the curtain here. The three of us have we only did one session of it so far, but Steven decided to run a One Piece tabletop game for the two of
One
us.
Piece?
So
It
that's
was
fun.
so terrible.
It was fun.
But it was so good.
Oh, good.
I'm a dirt man. Oh,
So was there
good times.
I feel like there was something else you were going to bring up before we started talking about before I mentioned the thick length and the sort of the writing approach.
I was still talking about Miracle's length and stuff.
Okay.
Or sorry, not Miracle's. Well, its original length.
Right.
Made up Miracle, you could say. The air exchange.
Mm-hmm.
That's an obscure reference.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was like it would have been a really different story. Oh, I found my note where I talked about this specifically. The whole story would have been more spiritual and positive if sad at times. Something like Forrest Gump. My exact words.
All right.
My mom always told me.
Yeah.
Life is like a tome of
My
heels.
sister always told me, "Don't cry, love."
Run, Emerin, run.
Why Forrest Gump specifically? I mean,
I don't know. That's it is a
Yeah,
very
because- yeah, it probably would have touched on more Fire Emblem Awakenings events instead of pretty much Emerin died in the desert of Plegia, died quote unquote. Palm Harbor and not sanctuary, the village where
Mhm.
she's bound in 20x. Or
I would
20
take a story where just like sits at a bus stop and just like lectures all the people who are sitting down about how she was actually there in the background of all of the events for Fire Emblem
And like
Awakening.
people are coming and going the whole time, and she's not like starting over every time it's someone new. She just continues talking.
And the last person is just like, "Are you telling me we've been sitting next to the former Exalt
The
the entire time?"
It's been 6 days.
I guess so.
I guess so.
We had to get through the pirates twice.
And she opens her little box and says, "Would you like a Fire Emblem jam?" Pirate ship.
That's a
sales
horrible
bot.
idea. I love it.
Oh, I also mentioned last time that whole Imran thing was kind of a twist originally.
Mhm.
Title of the chapter you recruit her in, the paralogue, is a hard miracle, which is where the title comes from.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Yes. Originally, the title was just going to be a hard miracle. So, like, great twist.
Yeah. A Fire Emblem fic titled that would probably give it away immediately.
Yeah.
I think shortening the title was definitely the right choice there.
I agree.
It definitely rolls off a little bit better.
One of the twists near the end of Dissonance is that a character has the skill miracle, which is a gameplay thing from Awakening.
Mhm.
I wondered if people who are like following my stories because of Dissonance, for some reason, Dissonance exploded, even though it. Anyway,
That's always the way it happens, right?
yeah, it just happens. Yeah, so I was wondering if people would think that that would have something to do with the title of the next story I write after Dissonance, being Miracle. Something to do with Miracle was had such a big thing to do with Dissonance. Well, only for one scene, but it was still an important scene.
It's a pretty big scene, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Dissonance is still kind of cool. Still think it's cool.
I still intend to read it. I would like to finish Into the Outrealms first. Just because I have a hard time focusing on reading multiple stories at the same time. I like to, especially if it's a longer story, do it all straight through rather than bouncing back and forth. Because if I pull myself away from something like that, there's only like a 20% chance I'm actually going to go back to it. Even if it's something I love, I just won't. It'll be hard for me to motivate myself to go back into that same experience again. I don't know if that makes
like
any
how
sense.
you started Persona 5 and then stopped and never came back.
It's not true. I came back to it like a month ago.
Did you come back since then?
Don't at me.
So Dissonance is short. It's 11 chapters, really, because the 12th was author notes one.
Right.
Which is kind of... That's the only part of it I really can't read. Because that was me thinking I was funny 5 years ago.
Oof.
See, I will say, I'm just gonna throw it all out there. As far as Dissonance goes, because I can't remember if we went over this the last time, but what I have told Nick and Jesse is, out of the 3 parts, Dissonance is definitely the weakest to me.
Yeah,
and it is the one I have the hardest time going back to in that trilogy.
In here, honestly. There are a few chapters I still like. Every now and again I reread the epilogue again. Sometimes I think there was something I said there that I want to pay off. Some lines from that I still haven't paid off in Into the Outrealms that I did plan ahead. But also, like chapter 4, which is the best. Things always happen in chapter 4s of my story.
So
every story I write.
That's the true secret. You read the 4th chapter of every story TheRepeat's ever written, and you'll find the real story. They fit together. It's
the
like a
4th
donut
word of every
within a
4th
donut.
chapter.
Yeah, even I mentioned last time I'm making like a Fire Emblem kind of game. Chapter 4 of that is also the turning point of that story too.
Oh, hell yes.
But what was I saying? Oh, right, it had nothing to do with reading it. It was the story is really easy to read. I think, like almost on a childish level, because when I first started writing fan fiction, I was like, for a long time, I've been writing fan fiction on my own since like 7th grade. I wrote a 5-part Sacred Stones fan fiction in 7th grade that was called Tales of the War of the Stones. It was just for the best that the laptop that had it on it was destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having written many short stories in my life, I can sympathize with that quite strongly. Yeah.
See, my old shame has been immortalized on my fanfiction.net page, and I don't have the heart to get rid of it.
I'll send you a link to his fanfiction page.
Oh God, I hate it so much.
It's okay. If you go through your follows, you'll find his account.
That is somebody's like trashy first fan fiction that they're like, oh, I love this so much when they start reading it, and I can't bring myself to take it down for that reason.
Well, it's one of those things.
Because I was there once. I like read my first trashy story and figured out that I liked fan fiction and thought it was great, and I still get like the occasional push in my inbox from someone who's like, lol, this is so amazing. And I'm like, you do you, kid. Someday you'll have taste, but it's not today.
Read a short one-shot Fire Emblem 4 fanfiction in like 2013. And I was like, I cannot find a spelling error in this. That just blew my mind so hard that I was like, maybe the genre is redeemable. Immediately. Yeah, so what I was getting at was I've been writing fan fiction my entire life, but I first uploaded in 2015. I was 19 because I had like an inspiration to write a complete Pokemon fan fiction called Love and Battles, which I still think is good and underrated. But I was like,
no shame here. Plug away.
Work underrated.
Plug away.
Yeah. The writing is a little rough because of just how I was at the time.
Because it was 2015.
Yeah, it was Abby's first fan fiction.
Yeah.
That's uploaded.
Yep. I know how that goes.
For. Yeah, so back in the early days of when I would write, I was like, right, I'm not going to be, stereotype or whatever. So I was like, trying to identify in words, what do I like, or what do I think are like pitfalls with writing fan fiction?
Mm-hmm.
I already didn't like self-insert, so I didn't have to worry about that at all. But there was a tendency I noticed for fan fiction to be really melodramatic, which goes back to what we were talking earlier about hurt comfort.
Right.
I was like, I'm never going to be too dramatic. Things are getting too sad, throw in a joke or something. And there have definitely been times I've been tempted to just let it ride, but I'm like, oh, it's been a long time since there's been levity. I want people to be having fun right now. This is why the first story I uploaded was a comedy. Why the second one I uploaded, which is Morgan, is like a really miserable premise, but it's funny. People have said, man, this would have been really sad if it weren't so funny. And I'm like, thank you for saying that.
You managed to take this horribly sad, horrible, depressing source material and make me laugh.
Yeah, I think if people have some fun and are then brought down, then,
You set them up so that when you knock them down, it hurts even more.
I think, again, mine and Nick's favorite fan fiction ever. It's a very serious story, like all in all, but it has some of like the funniest laugh out loud garbage to happen in it. Like just this huge because it's 3 separate stories. One is like an interlude, but during these 2 enormous, like very serious epic sprawls, both of them have like one enormous chapter that's almost entirely dedicated to just stupid comedy bullcrap.
Yeah,
I love it.
It completely breaks. Like, when I say it breaks up the flow of the story, I mean that in the best possible way, because it keeps you from getting way too bogged down in just how absolutely awful the things that are happening to these people is.
The stakes are so high.
Yeah. It's like, oh wow, we're all going to die. Let me just kick this small child down a flight of stairs real quick.
Sounds fantastic.
Don't forget the part where his head like clips the door frame and takes a chunk out of it.
Yeah.
Don't forget the fact that the child is heavily injured
Yeah.
with third-degree burns covering most of his
That's
body.
correct. It's very much a slapstick
I'm
comedy.
sure in context that's a comedy.
It's a Ranma 1/2 fic. So
Are you
I've never
familiar
seen
with
Ranma
Ranma 1/2
I'm
at all?
familiar, but I've never seen it.
yeah.
Okay, basically it's the original Love Dodecahedron,
Yeah.
where like
it's-
everybody likes somebody, but the formula is set so that there's a healthy relationship between any two people is impossible,
yeah,
and
Naturally.
it's a martial arts comedy
happens.
on the surface. Yeah.
Martial art. Oh, the show.
Now here's the part where we'll probably lose you. It's
Yep.
a crossover with Sailor Moon.
That it is.
Is that the one we're talking
We have
about?
not reviewed it.
Oh, okay.
It's similar vein, but a different approach to storytelling.
Okay. I was wondering if that
Glad
was the
you
one
guys-
where Jesse just could not remember any of the characters' names.
I think someday maybe we will get Jesse to read that one.
Well,
But,
I'm bad with like any Japanese names.
I guess for context at this point, we should probably just go ahead and address it. This particular fic, it's by an author named Claymade, who has been writing. How long has this been going on? Like 10?
Let me pull it up, because Dark Lords has been a long time.
Yeah. So the first part of it is called The Dark Lords of Naruma. The second part is The Dark Lords Strike Back, and it's a fifth as long as the first part is, because it is meant to be an interlude.
Okay, Dark Lords of Naruma was published
2011.
on May 30th, 2007.
Oh my god.
And
And
then
it-
the current installment of
what?
Dark Lords Ascended
2007.
was published
Oh my
in
God.
2012, back in July. And
The most
assuming
recent
it's
chapter.
not dead, it hasn't been updated since February last year.
But
I
he's done this
remember-
before.
It takes him a while to do chapters. I remember texting Nick on
It's been
February
ongoing.
19th of
Oh.
this year. And I remember saying, Nick, it's been a year since Dark Lords updated, which means we're that much closer to another chapter.
Yeah, it's very much like Berserk in that, oh god, it's been a year and a half since this last updated. Oh, that means there's one coming soon. So the quality of the writing is such, and the investment that you get in the story is such that you don't mind how long it takes to get another chapter out, because they're really good.
And the end is freaking in sight. Like,
Yeah.
we're almost there. Like, the next chapter might be an epilogue.
the major plot points have all resolved themselves. It's just cleanup now. And
Cool.
it's a 13-year story. How long, Steven? How many words in each part?
I was going to
Okay,
ask
this is like this is one of those fics that I like to measure in the metric of Harry Potter's.
Yeah.
Because the first chunk is 230,297 words, and then the interlude chunk is
So
76,297
it's like a
words,
quarter the length of the first one.
and then the current part is up to 387,519 words.
Yeah. So it's like 2/3 of a million words.
Like, it's a long story, but it's good. It's like worth that investment.
Mhm.
There's a reason we love it so much.
But you know,
It's good that it lets itself be funny.
oh, absolutely. Like, well, because it's one of those things where a lot like the Fire Emblem stuff that you write, that the humor is present in the source material. Like the juxtaposition of the horrible violence of war and the potential for the end of the world, but also funny jokes. And
One of
Ranma
our
One
grading
Half is
criteria.
a dumb, sort of shallow comedy harem anime, right? And Sailor Moon is, on the one hand, it's big heroes and epic battles and the end of the world, but also it's a Monster of the Week comedy. So if you go too far in one direction, you have to compensate with the other.
kind of I was realizing when you said like sudden, just absurd, ridiculous chapter. I was thinking that I was going to get into how I've kind of drifted away from that ideology of letting ridiculous things happen, or sorry, just like not letting myself get too serious. Because Miracle was the first story where I was just like, there's going to be levity. I'll sneak in at some point, I'm sure, but I definitely want this whole story to be serious.
Right.
Because Dissonance had funnies and stuff. Then I thought of The Outrealms Chapter 10, which I would consider later stage repeat storytelling. Because there's a scene like 3/4 of the way through of this like super heavy chapter. 3/4 of the way through, there's this one scene that's absolutely bonkers. If you remember from you rereading it, it's the part with Shanna.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things where since I read it all today, yeah, the chapter breaks are there, but it does all kind of blur together where those lines are.
Blur together for me too sometimes. I only remember
and you wrote the
it was the longest. Chapter 10 because it was my favorite, and Chapter 4 because it was the
The turning point.
I think in the matter of fan fiction,
That was a good one.
what kind of works with it, because you have to sort of think, because Fire Emblem, sort of as our case study here, Fire Emblem, yeah, it takes itself seriously, but also it doesn't take itself seriously
Not too
at
seriously.
certain intervals. It has a specific balance to it.
And the darkest
And I
stories have
Right.
or
Keep
just
talking,
like
I gotta
complete
put my phone
comic
on the
relief
charger.
characters.
I think part of writing a good fan fiction for a specific work, part of that includes kind of feeling out where that balance is of where a work does and doesn't take itself seriously, and figuring out how to emulate that same balance.
Yeah, so I agree completely.
Sorry.
It's like definitely. I actually originally when I first started, I was like, another pitfall is people say fuck too much in fan fiction. This is Pokemon. So I had a rule of like, don't fuss too much outside of how the game would.
You want to keep it consistent.
Yeah. So I broke that rule eventually.
I think what it kind of comes down to for that is like how many curse words are you going to put in a character's dialogue before they start sounding like they're not a person anymore?
Yeah. And Miracle was actually the first story where I broke that rule because Martin the merchant says, "Bullshit." The word Emran should learn.
Right.
But like the third word she ever needs to learn is bullshit.
Bullshit. You got to be able to call it.
And I had a couple other characters say shit throughout the story. But for me, it was like, "Ooh, I'm so bad." And I wrote "Resurrection sucks" because fuck is said 4 times in that story. Once each in the first 2 chapters and twice in the 3rd chapter.
Open up that doc, hit Control F, type in fuck, and make sure that number stays below 4.
More than 1 per chapter.
4 4-letter words for chapter 4.
Yeah.
Curse words. What are those?
I wrote a really indulgent Half-Life a few weeks
saw
ago.
That.
Yeah.
I haven't read it yet, but I did see that.
Yeah. Thought it for a while. I was like, man, I really don't care about my rule anymore because of how much the characters say fuck in that story. And I was like, wait, no, this is Half-Life.
Yeah.
This is Fire Emblem. I forget. This is a rated M franchise for once.
Again, it's like it's the game of matching tones.
Yeah.
Because like there's also like sort of the metric of writing the story you want to write and like sort of purposing the elements of the existing material to what you want to make versus emulating that material effectively.
Well,
so it's go ahead.
I think like there is a place in fan fiction and for literature in general for like the grimdark type of stories, right? That appeals to a very specific mentality, a very specific desire for the thing you're going to read. But with fan fiction in particular, a lot of the reasons that people go to these stories in these specific universes that use these certain canons as their bases, it's because they like
more of thing.
Yeah, they like that tone. They want more outside of that just what the official material has given them. So if you can maintain
because people want it so bad, you can use that against them.
Yeah,
It's a weapon I use in Into the Outrealms.
you use it quite well.
It seems like an adventure in like Fire Emblem Awakening's kind of style of adventure for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Then it has a couple of twists, and then later, past a point that is readable at the moment, it turns miserable.
Well,
So,
because one of the things that you did in Into the Outrealms that definitely sort of fits the Fire Emblem storytelling is it's compartmentalized within the larger narrative. So, like, you've got the overarching, like, search for Robin, but the majority of the story so far has been the Einherjar.
The Einherjar saga.
You've noticed that my ability to speak is degraded. Einherjar, is that it?
Einherjar.
Just call them
better get out of her yard.
Einherjar.
Einherjar. Okay. I will
Just
try
call
to
them
keep that.
Ian.
I refuse, Stephen. I refuse. And
EJ.
and that
That's my buddy EJ over there.
EJ, hey, you get out of her yard.
Just imagine Marth, but with like a pocket protector and nerdy glasses.
And his trading cards are sitting in the pocket. No, but that compartmentalized sort of storytelling very much mirrors, at least in Awakening's case, the way that the story is told in game.
We're so good at this long silence thing.
I know, right? It's great.
I didn't even notice it until you said something. I was thinking about what to say.
Again, I had another one of those moments where I'm like, oh, my internet connection might have just died. We'll see. It's been
And again, I
bad
think
today.
it's because it's kind of the challenge of, and sort of the question of what kind of fan fiction you want to write. Because like, I'll find stuff that like I enjoy that is like completely divergent from the sort of tone and style of the source material.
Right.
And I might go, yeah, that was interesting, but I'm probably not going to recommend it because it's not what I came here for. I didn't enjoy it because I enjoyed Thing. I like enjoyed it because it had its own sort of appeal.
But
then when you're coming for right.
Yeah, I mean that's its own sort of new sort of discovery. That's a good thing in itself, right? Because that means that you went there expecting one thing, but what you got was an author whose style that you liked.
Yeah, I agree because some of the favorite stories I've ever read are dark ones.
Mhm.
I talked about it last time. Famed Genius and Queen of Sorrow in particular.
Yeah, and I believe I linked as many of those as I could find directly in the comment section of that video.
I actually ended up reading all of Another Again, which was pretty enjoyable.
Actually, not caught up on Another Again. Yeah, around like chapter 23 or so. Usually he would upload the chapter and then send me I edited for that story. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Right, you baited on that one.
Oh wait, did you mention that?
I don't think I did.
Okay.
Yeah, starting like chapter 11, I asked him like, "Hey, this chapter had some typos. I'm in love with your story. Would you mind if I edited for you?" I love editing.
Mm-hmm.
Which apparently is fair according to people I've edited for. They were like, "You seriously to? Like you came to me?" Okay. Yeah, so like he uploaded chapter 23 or something, and usually he would upload the chapter and then send me the copy to revise. So at the time I was like, come on, heading it out there first. People will read the copy that I didn't edit. And then he would edit it with a Slayer.
With your notes.
Yeah, he uploaded chapter 23, and I was like, I will wait patiently for him to send me a copy. And then he must have forgotten or something.
It's like, oh, editing, what is this?
Yeah.
I mean, it happens.
Because he
Sometimes
would have
you
like
just
6 month breaks or something, and then upload a chapter, and then he would message me saying something like, "Hey, I know it's been a while. I don't know if you're still up for this kind of thing." So it was probably just that again.
yeah. Well, plus sometimes you can do the same thing every day for a month in the same order, and then one day you just forget one of the steps. Like it happens.
Absolutely.
I know it happens to me constantly.
So I think he's only uploaded like 2 chapters since then. I feel like it's been a really long time since the story updated.
It happens. I mean, again, it's a place where you're providing. I mean, I don't have to tell you this. It's a bunch of content you're providing people for free. Sometimes you just don't have the time.
Again, when given the choice between thing I want to do and thing I want to do, but I can make money doing it, which would you do?
Yeah.
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 That story's so good though.
Look at what I do for a living right now.
Yeah, that's the one that's not dark.
Yeah.
Really. I said last time that it's like it feels like a story I would write because it's got the kind of I feel like it's not so much that it's a story I would write as it's also a story that's going for the original flavor of Fire Emblem with like although he does say fuck more.
Oh no.
I do
Brilliant.
think one of the things about that story,
Too many fucks.
and I would say this about your stories too, because I think they're very tonally consistent with the source material and with doing sort of what the source material does. But does it make sense if I also say it feels like you're putting much more thought into it than the writers of the game put into it, and that's just something that I feel like most
What do you
readers
mean, some
appreciate.
thought, period.
I mean, definitely, if they ever had an idea of how to handle Imran's sacrifice, it was probably something where they were like, "We're not going to have time for that, unfortunately."
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things just end up
Like,
getting
barely
done for time.
considered it at all. Not like I can speak for Japanese developers, but
I
yeah.
think the big part of it is like Fire Emblem is one of those things that is like, how do I say this? It's deceptive in how complex it makes you think it is,
Yeah.
but it's
I
it's a lot simpler than it gives you the implication of it being.
It's got the illusion
So
of
I
depth.
think what a lot of stories that people enjoy do is instead of giving the implication of complexity, it actually follows through on that.
yeah, it is into the it fills in the gaps.
Well, I mean, there's the potential for a lot to be there, and for the purposes of a fun adventure strategy game, that's really all you need. But it leaves a lot open for the interpretation of fans like you and other authors to come in and say, well, actually, we can expand on that.
Yeah, and I think Fire Emblem Awakening exemplifies that because it has so much it doesn't explain,
Mm-hmm.
but it like leaves hints maybe. So like that's probably why I've been so fascinated about writing fan fiction for that game in particular because it's far from my favorite Fire Emblem game or favorite story.
Right.
Favorite one was the Sacred Stones, but I can never think of something to write about it because it already feels really complete.
Mm-hmm.
But like,
here's my next question for you. If you had to write a fanfic called Byleth's Gardening Extravaganza, what would it be about?
it would be about Byleth having an uncomfortable fixation on gardening when he should be worrying about the war.
But if I
Off the top of my head,
but if I spend more
assume there's a story behind
to
this.
treat my plants, I'll get a better yield out of them. I gotta come back every day
Has
to make sure
boost
they're okay.
that professor level.
Off, Edelgard. I'm watering my azaleas.
Look what you've done to my peonies!
Marigolds!
I may not know my flowers, but I know a bitch when I see one! And she's actually just talking to Edelgard.
See, this is off topic, but I've been, maybe this
Here
came
we
up
are
last time. I've been playing Three Houses as the female Byleth,
I have as well.
and whenever I'm going around at the school, I like make her wear like the dancer outfit because it somehow feels less skimpy than her normal clothes.
Yeah.
A little bit, actually. Yeah, I can see that.
I think what it really does is it makes her look And my wife pointed this out to me about why I probably preferred it, especially before the time skip. It makes her look a bit older, which helps when there's all
It's
the
kind of
other
like,
people her age who are also students.
yeah, it kind of makes her look like she's dressed more like Manuela.
A little more professionally.
Yeah.
At least
Um,
professionally in the context of a Fire Emblem officers training school. Like your combat uniform doesn't really look like a combat uniform.
It's anime world, Nick. The practicality of your uniform is directly proportional to the amount of skin you're showing when you're a female.
Look, respectfully.
A naked woman is practically invincible.
Oh, is
That's
that
the
why
plot of
Yoko
Kill la
Leonard was so
Kill.
strong? We both went for 2 different trigger animes.
We did.
What did Jesse say?
That's the plot of Kill la Kill, and I just referenced Gurren Lagann. Oh, we've been going for a little over an hour. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we wrap this up?
Yeah. I wanted to talk more about. We had a perfect segue earlier, but I let it go.
Oh,
Couldn't hold it back
Was-
anymore.
by all means, hop on and give it a ride. The segue, I mean.
I wanted to get into like motivation, and
Yeah.
I stopped writing. Well, I thought I retired, but apparently not.
You're welcome.
all
Just kicking and
Yeah.
screaming, bring him back.
all royalties will go to you. All the ad revenue on my next story will go to you.
Yes.
Yeah, like
Oh,
all 3
Sweet
cents.
fan fiction money.
Yeah. So, a big reason why I stopped writing was it sounds stupid when I say it, but it's
It probably
because,
is.
yeah, exactly. I knew you'd say that. But it was kind of vain. It was because I would like write this whole long story that I put a lot of heart into, and then it would get 2 reviews. It's really vain to be like, oh, no one's paying attention to me, I'm not going to do this. Because anytime I would get a review, it was always, it should be I'm writing it for them or I'm writing it for me.
Right.
Not having that dopamine rush of validation was.
That
Honestly, I
doesn't sound
think
stupid
that's
at
a
all.
lot more valid than you think it
Yeah.
is. My wife floats around in fan fiction communities on Tumblr that I will never have anything to do with because it's a fandom that I just have no interest in. But
I think I know the one you're talking about. Yes.
Curiosity's sake, what is it?
Thomas Sanders.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't
Did you
she
do
run? Not to completely out your wife or anything here. Doesn't she run a Sanders Sides blog or something?
She does.
Okay.
She runs a Sanders Sides blog on Tumblr. But something that comes up a lot there because their whole community is big on fan fiction.
Mhm.
And something that comes up a lot there is like sort of how feedback is kind of it's the oil that keeps the fan fiction machine running.
Yeah.
And because just keeping it going off of your own motivation, off of your own desire to see something done is one thing, but you have to be like pretty like single-mindedly focused on that thing, which isn't impossible and it's not a bad thing either, but it's difficult to do something like that. But when you're getting positive feedback, when people are enjoying it, and especially if it feels like you're a part of a community that toward it, then at that point, like the motivation levels spike. And like you said, you get that dopamine rush that says, positive reinforcement. I'm going to write some more.
Well, and I mean, the same goes for any form of art, honestly. If you're doing something truly for yourself and for no other motivation, you'd have no reason to share it with the world, right? You share it with the world because you want other people, even subconsciously, you want other people to see what you're doing, and whether they're giving you feedback or not, you appreciate the attention for it. So if you're not getting any of that, and what little you get, it doesn't really expand on anything, you don't really have a reason to continue sharing that. You don't feel like, I don't know, stop me if I if you feel like I'm not speaking for you, which is not my intent. I'm speaking from my own experiences making and producing.
Stop. In the name of love.
Can I continue, or should I
Can't.
stop? Okay. No, I've honestly lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Fuck.
Wow.
I
There you
Anyway, no, it's if you're not getting that feedback, that interaction, that motivation, it really can sap any desire to continue. Because what's the point if no one's going to help me try and improve? Or what's the point if no one's going to smile when they see what I've made or when they read the story I've written?
Yeah. One's gonna see, oh wow, Into the Outrealms uploaded chapter 18 after 2 years. Let me go read it and review.
And
Yeah. Chapter 18 actually still doesn't have any reviews, but it doesn't bother me that much. Compared to the he says to the like chapter 17, when one had anything to say about that, really, that was a lot more of a punch in the gut than the chapter 18 stuff, because I can kind of accept it. Like once it's complete, if it's ever complete, is when it'll get, almost said, the attention it deserves. It'll get
then you'll see.
we'll be more willing to comment, I think, if it's finished, if there's more to talk about.
It's like, well, he's not done with it yet, so maybe I should hold back and see if he does anything. Well, and Steven mentioned the fan fiction scene on Tumblr, and I'm pretty active on Tumblr in general. And the single most common thing I see authors and fanfiction writers and fanfic authors say is replies and comments are the most valuable form of interaction. Even if it's just to say, wow, I loved it, or this was great, or just to quote something and laugh, or like, how dare you? That's the wow, someone sees this, someone recognizes this, someone's actually reading what I'm writing.
Yeah, when I would review other stories, I tried to be the reviewer I wanted to see
Yeah.
in the world. Like for Another Again, I would leave these long essays on every chapter about things I liked or details I noticed he snuck in or whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
It's-
and you've
it
seen
feels
my
so
reviews
good.
on your stuff. I'm basically the same way.
It feels so good to get a review like that.
So what you're saying is Steven
know,
needs to
I
review
got-
chapter 18.
I will do it as soon as I read the other 17 chapters again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, even a couple of negative reviews I got. Like there was one I got for Miracle that was in depth. I enjoyed. There was another one for another story of mine called Lies for Children, actually by the author who wrote Another Again. He reviewed that story. I think he's a fan of the pairing, Laszlo and Perry. He found the story unprompted. But he had a long critique of that story that I very much appreciated. But yeah, just like having things to say is so great.
Well, yeah,
I
absolutely.
kind of think reviews like, wow, this is so great, can't wait for next chapter. I think that's like a half step up from not leaving a review. Like,
Right.
It's elitist to say that, because obviously someone's being very kind to take time out of their day to say that. But still
And-
feels like
I mean,
How
you
about
can,
people who are like, when next chapter?
No,
Yeah.
like you can feel that way while still acknowledging that people don't like technically owe you anything, just as much as you don't owe them the next chapter. You know,
absolutely. They definitely don't. Yeah.
there's nothing
Totally.
wrong with wanting more. Like
It's a community
wanting someone
interaction.
to be more active in telling you the things that they want.
I got one one review from the old chapter 18. Someone just replied in like normal
I know exactly which review you're
at the end.
talking about.
Forgot to take down the April Fool's chapter.
Oh,
Yep.
Like, yeah, it's an April Fool's chapter and not me admitting it's dead.
no, it's gonna stay up.
Yeah.
You can skip it if you want. It's a joke.
Oh, Dissonance's reviews were a minefield. The story got by far the most reviews of any of my stories. It has like 80 something. But there would be trolls who would find it and leave replies like 7 chapters in a row where they just completely miss the point and call me an asshole and a pedophile. So those were probably my least favorite reviews. They are fun.
Feel like those people don't quite understand what they're reading.
No, I don't think they do.
I feel like they kind of missed the point a little bit.
Yeah, they called it a bashing Sumia, promoting Na, who's a child. She's not a child.
I mean, they're all like
not that either.
The children are all like of marrying age.
Yeah.
Robin can canonically marry Na, can't he?
They're adults.
Man.
Every character in every character that is playable and controllable in Fire Emblem is an adult in Awakening.
Like, I get how they're missing the point, but they're still missing the point completely.
They said something along the lines of, after the twist reveal in that story, that I was going back and I was just doing this because everyone hated the story at first. That was why I changed it.
Okay.
Would you like to see my notes, sir?
Would you like to see?
Here is my outline.
The first 7 chapters before I started uploading. Would you like to see the proof?
New fic published into the outline.
We dive deep into the gates of my Microsoft Word documents.
Yeah.
Make sure you
think they
don't
might
get
be more
any outline sickness.
Outline sickness. Oh no.
But
Think
yeah,
look at the
right,
shades
kind of
start
like-
moving.
The rest of the arc, being able to come up with a satisfying way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's also a good segue into another reason of like motivation going away. Because part of me thought that like I still think my ideas coming up are cool, but some part of me rationalized it as I'm sure the planning part will be is what makes it look interesting, and I'll have trouble executing it that well. Because I have a couple of stories that were executed well, a couple of stories were not.
But you never know until you put it on the paper,
right? Pride writing on it, I guess, because of how long it is and how much time I spent on it.
Right.
So like, the Outrealms was kind of lapsing under its own size, I guess, in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, the more I write, the more like stuff there is to pay off.
Right.
There are characters and plot lines I added as like a side. Like, this would be interesting if this happened, which I do a lot in a lot of my stories. The whole Robin romance subplot was like that in Miracle F. But then because I made that, I thought, okay, now I have to pay that off, which I do.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of other stuff like that, like Severa wasn't planned around and Into the Outrealms very much at first. But I added that whole subplot with her. 6, the flashback chapter, the half flashback chapter. So just a lot of stuff like that becomes very bulky to deal with a story this large.
I'm sure.
There's so many character arcs. There's so much that I have to pay off, and that I have to pay off in a satisfying way, and that has to not conflict with the story ideas I have, or else I'll have to redo those,
right?
Which I do, and I have done, and I'm supposed to do as a competent writer, allegedly. But,
sometimes the story has its own ideas, right?
Yeah. It's hard to let go, and even though I can let go, and I've shown in the past that I can let go, it's an emotional burden, I guess, that I have to back up and know what I was thinking, what I was planning here, or like what this paid off, what now needs to be paid off instead to change it, stuff like that.
Well, and this is kind of a phrase that I hate because it used to get thrown around all the time, but it applies specifically to before you finish something, right? The idea of you're your own worst critic. Like, when it's something that you've spent all this time on and it's not done yet, and you know you kind of want to finish it someday, but you're not sure, and you've got all this invested in, the only person who really is, I guess feeling that sort of fear is you, and that doesn't invalidate that. It just means that the only way to really know if it's ever going to work is to do it. Whether you decide to do it or not, you know, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I guess
I think I'm following you.
Yeah, I guess my point is that's a totally normal thing to feel, given, especially with the length of Into the Outrealms and how much depth you put into it so far. I totally understand why you feel that sort of stress when you think about that.
Yeah, and there's always the possibility that I've forgotten something.
Yeah.
Like I've missed out on an arc, and then I commit to something, and then maybe 5 chapters down the line, I realize, oh shit, I forgot to include this.
Which is the danger of releasing a chapter by chapter sort of format.
Yeah, which I can always go back and change.
Yeah.
But I hate doing that. I don't even want to go back and change dissonance. Though that might also be part of because the story is kind of in stone at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I did just send a motivational Shia LaBeouf into the chat.
Oh, did you?
Is that an off topic?
Sure is.
Sure
Just
is.
do it.
Just do it.
Classic.
Don't let your dreams be dreams.
Just light them on fire, watch them burn, and then go do something else. Like me.
Yeah. Another contributing factor to stopping fan fiction. About a year, like a year and a half ago. It was a year ago January. A year ago January, I stopped playing Fire Emblem Heroes because a few months, or like in the months leading up to that, I was starting to get really sick of that game. It started like getting me disillusioned with the whole fucking franchise because Heroes is that much of a cancer on society.
Oh yeah. I played Dokkan Battle for 4 years.
Yeah, I played Heroes for 2. I can't imagine playing another mobile game ever again. People try to get me to, like, my friends will be like, you should try Shadowverse, it's so much better. Oh,
No.
get out of here. I'm not playing a mobile game.
Bye.
Play
Fire
Warframe
Emblem,
instead.
all things couldn't keep me, nothing. Yeah, so the moral is that I was getting sick of Fire Emblem, kind of.
Yeah, burnout.
Yeah, because I've been obsessed with this franchise since like 2012, and I've been playing the game since like 2005.
Right.
I've understandably I had my fill of Fire Emblem, and I wasn't optimistic about Three Houses from what I had seen of it up to that point. But then they started revealing other things at like E3 2019, and I was like, oh shit, this game might actually be sick. And it came out, and it was sick. So back into Fire Emblem again.
Right.
If there's anything that can be said about Three Houses, it's the fact that, in my opinion, it does not visually put its best foot forward.
Oh, no Fire Emblem game. No, some of them look all right. Like the Game Boy Advance games have great battle animations.
Awakening did not visually put any of its feet forward.
I get it.
Just the ankles where they were cut off at.
Sorry, I had to.
I'd say Echoes is probably the best visually of any Fire Emblem game, though the animations are the best in the Game Boy Advance game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do think that if a Fire Emblem has a chance to actually look good now, it's post Three Houses, because this is me thinking it's something I read somewhere, and I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they used the same engine that was used for Fire Emblem Warriors for Three Houses.
I think that's true.
I think, yeah.
For sure,
I think I
Toei
read that.
Tecmo did a lot of the grunt work on Three Houses.
I wouldn't be surprised if, like, a lot of what's going on there is just the fact that you're running in an engine that's made to basically run like the super fast Warriors game, which is why a lot of the animations in Three Houses are a little floaty.
Come to think of it, the movement in Three Houses when you're running around like the school and the camps and stuff, that
super
feels super Warriors.
But
I hadn't thought about that.
I think after the success of Three Houses,
Warriors
if a
2,
Fire
baby.
Emblem game has a chance of getting like its own proprietary engine at this point, it might be whatever game they make after Three Houses, honestly.
I mean, all else fails, you could make an entire Fire Emblem game in Unreal. Easily.
Basically.
Just keep throwing money at Epic. That's They definitely need it. They don't have enough money at all. Just keep throwing money at Epic.
Fire Emblem game, as beautiful as its character designs, would be a dream come true.
Yeah. Yep.
See, while I've been playing Three Houses, my wife just keeps getting confused because, and the confusion has tapered off after time because of things. But initially, because Sothis is there, like just yapping in your ear, and my wife is getting very confused because the voice of Sothis is the same voice actress who does Morgana in Persona 5.
It is.
Morris.
So after having played through all of Persona 5 with her there, and now Sothis is like this very haughty sort of style of speaking, and it's just such a change from, hey, you should go to bed. So yeah, good times have been had. Fan fiction.
Another one for the counter.
Yeah, what's that, 5 now? I'm gonna say it's 5. At least. Can we get 6? I mean, I could start ranting about dice or something, but I don't know.
Yeah, or Jesse could talk about whatever he wants.
Jesse could talk.
Jesse, talk about Warframe.
Dude, I haven't played that in like 3 years.
You don't want to get the new mod for Latron? Anyway.
Yeah. So, Three Houses was sick, and I've been playing a lot of Fire Emblem fan games recently, so I've been into the franchise again. So, there's a solid chance I could get back into writing the story or more now fan fiction. There was a lot of you couldn't imagine how many stories I and ideas for never got around to actually writing over the years. The first one I ever planned to write was that was a Fire Emblem 4 story, but I was like, this is going to be a long one for sure. So I'm going to wait until I finish Into the Outrealms before I write this. Great idea, 2015 repeat.
Put it on the back burner. Come back to it later.
Yeah. I was thinking this story idea is sick, and I would need to dedicate all my time to it. No fucking way. If I ever get to it, it's likely it won't be finished. Or it'll be completely pared down to something like Miracle length at most. Probably not even that much, though. I think Miracle even was...
Miracle's the length of a full-length novel. Like, don't undersell that.
I was about to say, yeah, even that story was pretty exhausting, but yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hobbit is like 56K, I think.
Your average novel
Miracle
is 70 to 100K words.
Right.
Which puts into perspective just how much writing fanfic authors do.
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to pull it up for reference. And this is cheating a bit because it's actually written on a Space Battles forum, so it's not one author. It is a whole bunch of people.
Space Battles.
Cool.
Halkagania Online. It is a crossover of two things that I kind of hate.
Yeah.
I hate Sword Art Online, and I also hate
Familiar of Zero.
Familiar of Zero.
Awful. It's absolutely awful. I tried.
Familiar of Zero
so
is
hard.
like
Guilty pleasure for me.
It's fucking
I can
awful.
tell it sucked, but I still liked it.
okay.
I've got a couple of those.
Here's my recommendation to you then, Repeat. There is a fanfic that I actually really enjoy. It's called Halkagania Online. It is a crossover of those two things. Because, like, here's the premise. Cause are you familiar with Sword Art Online? Like
I feel like the first
general
10
plot
episodes,
structure?
it was whatever.
If you know the plot of
Okay.
the first season, you're good. That's all you need.
Okay.
So in the second season, they're all like in a fairy RPG.
Actually, it's the
that
second half of the
isn't
first season.
like the second half of the first
There
season,
you
right after like the first arc.
The good
But they're
one.
in like the fairy game. This game is not a death game; it's an actual,
It's
game.
just a fucking MMO.
And they're like trying to solve the silly plot. Meanwhile, familiar summoning ritual is happening, and when Louise summons her familiar, she basically summons the entire MMO world on top of Halkagania. So now
Yeah.
all of these people who are just like, regular
Playing
people in
World of
Japan
Warcraft
have to like deal with the fact that now their player avatars are their real bodies.
Yeah.
All of their skills proportional to what they have in the game has been crammed inside of their heads, and now they have to deal with this world that might just want to kill them solely on the basis that they have pointy ears.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually really well done. Actually,
Pacing is weird
probably its
sometimes.
biggest strength is just the way it looks at things politically, and just all of the boring stuff. Like, this is a fic that asks the questions, but what about plumbing? But what about food? But what about economy?
No, it does. One of its strengths is absolutely addressing the things that the majority of stories would just completely brush off. It's like, oh, well, none of these buildings in the MMO had any of these actual amenities, and the doors were always locked because they didn't exist. Well, we have to break the doors down because they're actually part of the building, and no, they don't have any of these amenities. They don't exist. You have to make it work.
But for reference, because right now, because all of it is on Space Battles, but most of it is on fanfiction.net. For reference, the first part, because there's
For
three
reference, mind you.
quote-unquote volumes of Halkagania Online that are currently on fanfiction.net. Volume 1, which is the longest, by far, like very much by far, Volume 1 is 548,335 words. It's 73 chapters. It is a doorstop.
I've gotten about 50 chapters into it the 2 times I've read it, but because the first time I read it was during college and I was working a summer job and I would literally just read it on my breaks, I just ran out of time. And the second time was recently, and I am continuing with it.
Volume 2, a little more forgiving, 379,000 words.
Just a casual 379.
Just a little more digestible.
In an afternoon.
Yeah.
And Volume 3 comes in at a paltry, dismal, disappointing 272,000 words.
And after the size of these fics, no wonder you blaze through 90% of NC Outlands in a day.
Yeah. So this is the sort of thing that remember when I said I would just read during school in high school? I as in I would go to school with a book I hadn't started yet, and by the end of the day I was done with it.
I do that in middle school too, when I read a lot.
Yeah, if I sit down to read something, I'd still go through it that quick. I just don't ever do that. Because, we live in a world where we need to be constantly entertained and stimulated.
100% live in a society.
We do, in fact, live in a society.
The moral of this story is, if you are interested and you hate your free time, try that one out.
What's free time?
I think if I'm at the point where I would rather be reading fan fiction, I should probably just write fanfiction.
That's the mindset of the artist.
And not to knock any of the amazing fanfics out there, because I'm sure 1% is still a lot. Of Sturgeon's Law. But I just don't really.
Well, theoretically, you should just be able to read the stuff you
Sturgeon's
review, right?
Law from 90% to 99%. Just given the internet. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I wish we could feasibly review on our main show. Because at the moment we're still like picking shorter things. I've been tossing around ideas with these two about like trying to review something more long form and trying to like come up with a way that would work. But like something like, as much as I love Halkagania Online, oh my god. How am I gonna get Jesse to read 1,000,000 words?
I'm such a slow reader, dude. It's not even funny.
Like the hardest part of something like that is the most ideal situation would be we do one episode where we review the whole thing and then we move on. But that's just not feasible.
Don't be a coward. Look the views.
Ah, you're right. No, another thing we considered is like doing it in chunks, right? 10 to 15 chapters at a time, and then move on to the next one in the next episode. But that's the sort of thing that ideally we could like tack on to the end of another episode and just have running as a secondary segment.
Yeah. Plus, I don't really agree with that, because it's hard to judge things like writing
Exactly.
quality from a small snippet.
Yeah,
Even if you take a vertical slice in the middle of the story, it's so hard to say.
yeah,
There's
and
one
that's the other
few years
problem.
ago that an acquaintance of mine asked if I would read one of his stories for him. And I was only planning on reading like the first 3 chapters because it was 14. I can't remember how many words it was. But I was like, no, it's not fair. I had some issues with like story and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, it's completely unfair to judge that without having caught up at least.
Right.
I read the whole 14 chapters and my complaints all still.
Right. And as the usual curator, I try to pick things that I know will have good things to say about.
Which is the
'Cause
idea of the series anyway.
Right. Time I was asked, and this person, I didn't have any expectations about the quality of the story, but I enjoyed talking to this person a lot because they were very articulate about what they liked about when they would review my stories.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, they were a very well-spoken person. I would definitely was like, yeah, I'll absolutely do this for you. And
Well, if you've learned anything from us, it's that being well-spoken doesn't mean anything.
That or it means everything, and he's really just entertaining us to entertain himself.
I was just brutally honest to him, and he was appreciative. So he did end up continuing that story. He said, I'll take some of this advice into account. There are other things I don't agree with, and I'm not going to change. And I was like, I absolutely respect that.
I take no criticism. I will change nothing.
Change
I love
something.
being that person.
Never.
Changed
But
a
yeah,
couple. He said so, and he continued writing the story. I think it's like 3 times as long now.
That's good for him.
Good for him.
I'm thinking if we ever do like long form stuff, because there is one story that we're kind of looking at, and by we I mean me.
Which one?
But dreaming.
Okay.
That's
but
that
over, by
one
the way.
story, it's because it's more of a slice of life affair, but at the same time, it's also kind of split into pretty digestible arcs.
Yeah.
So if we preliminary split it into the arcs that we wanted to read and picked good stopping points, not based on like let's read 10 chapters, then 10 chapters, then 10 chapters, but we're going to read up through this story beat and then stop, time for discussion. Let's convene the book club, and then we go on to the next story beat, stop, and then like do it again. Like,
and
that's a possibility.
And this is one of those things, like, this is a side podcast show thing. We don't really need to get too deep into the mechanics of how we're considering changing the main show. But if we did something like that, we would probably end up saving the actual review, like the numeric review portion, till the end of the story.
Right.
So you do bring up an excellent point in that judging things solely based on that small segment is absolutely unfair. Is it worth discussing those small segments as you go and then evaluating like maybe improvements in writing style or changes in plot or direction? I think so.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that is different from what I was doing because he asked me to review it, so I reviewed it as a whole.
Right.
If you're just there's definitely value to be had in discussions like that. Because there was some story. I remember I used to binge TV tropes when I was in high school. And there's some tropers were obsessed with some web comic or something. I think it was called Worm, something like that. But like half the appeal of the story apparently was going to the comment section after catching up on a chapter and reading people's like elaborate theories and stuff like that. So it's kind of like that. It's just for something that already exists. So yeah, I wasn't trying to say there's no value in discussing it. I'm just saying sometimes criticisms you level at a story are feel unfair if you don't
read the
if you
whole
don't
thing.
Chance. But obviously, if you're doing it piece by piece, that implies that you're going to be reading the whole thing.
Right.
It's not that there's no value in discussing it. It's just that your discussion has no value.
Did I imply that?
It's not that I hate your ideas. It's just that I hate you as a person.
I don't hate your ideas. I just hate who they come from.
No, you didn't imply that.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, what? I must have phrased it wrong.
No, we got what you were saying.
I'm sorry. I went to my parents' house and they were watching Frasier.
I'm sorry too.
But yeah, I think we've exhausted basically every topic that we had.
And some that we didn't.
But yeah, fan fiction.
Things left to say.
Ding.
Number one was I remembered earlier you were saying something. I actually was saying something. I just remembered. It was about when I was still talking about the early stories I was writing. Dissonance of prose feels really different from the rest of my stories because alongside the rule of like don't get too heavy, don't too much, and the love of God don't have sex in it. The other one was less is more. So I tried to always keep things brief. So my earlier stories are really terse compared to my later stories, where I still try to follow less is more to an extent. Sometimes I indulge and just let myself have long paragraphs. There were so many times where I'd be proofreading Dissonance or Morgan, and I'd be like, this paragraph is too long. Let's see how I can rephrase it.
Well, you know what they say, brevity is the soul of bullshit.
See, there's I've been running into a bunch of writing YouTube channels recently for whatever reason, which is funny because I don't do a whole lot of writing myself. But I've been running into a lot of them and how they talk about like a lot of thriller novels and how they have like all of these like consecutive 3-word paragraphs that like are good for like communicating action, but it gets stale and sort of repetitive after a while, which is a good way of describing most of those series too.
Well, yeah, if you don't vary your sentence and paragraph structure, your brain falls into a rhythm and you kind of just start to skim over it and get bored with it.
Yeah, because there's a time for words and there's a time to let the situation speak for itself. And part of becoming a skilled writer, I think, is just learning what those times are. When it's a time to let the gates open and just all of the word falls come out, and then the times when basically you just let the quiet moment hang there and do what it needs to, so to speak.
We're really good at that last part.
Related to that, but not in the way you think, is the way like parody fix. The best part of all of those to me is how usually they're written like really short and the spelling is terrible, and then they'll just have one paragraph like 3 chapters in that's just perfect English where they go into insane detail, and then they're back to saying dumb bullshit the next sentence. That's the moment I always wait for in any parody I read. It's always the best part.
Look, good writing.
Like, that's your reveal. Like, I actually don't suck. In case any form of Poe's law was in effect here, now you know.
See, I think my favorite form of that is like when it's like an aside, like it starts like something that's completely incomprehensible, like it's borderline moon speak. And then there's like just like in parentheses a brief aside where the author is just like, it is worth noting at this point that in such a culture, and then so on and so forth, and then back to your regularly scheduled bullcrap.
That was like a super common sort of writing format like 10 years ago. All the random author's notes and asides inserted in fan fiction. Sometimes I miss that. Sometimes I realize that it's good that we as a society have, and we are a society, have moved on from that.
I mean, I blame the British.
Mid-chapter, I never was into.
I mean, sometimes, yeah, I mean, they totally break up the flow.
If you're reading a thesis paper or something, and it has its entire source now instead of just a one, like source one.
Yeah,
I mean, there's like an artful aside, and then there's like basically the entirety of Family Guy.
Oof.
Ooh.
That's not even like an oof. You're right.
I
I take back the
It's
oof
true, though.
rescinded. Yeah, there's the artful aside, and then there's whatever the hell we do when we decide to start talking about something else.
Fan fiction.
Anyway, fan fiction.
Number 84, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, something like that.
I should have like a clicker.
Just a little incrementing counter that you just every time click.
Yeah, so the last thing I had to say on the subject of motivation is I wrote this story or it's on my AO3. It's called Sweet. I wrote it as part of a Secret Santa exchange in like 2017 or so. So I was having trouble for a while as soon as I got the Secret Santa, figuring out what I wanted because I knew like what her favorite pairing was, Robin Gaius.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to write something about that, but I could not think of anything. I kind of cobbled something together last minute. Sorry, Lainey, if I know you're not watching this, but if you ever do happen across it,
I'm sure she appreciated it anyway.
But yeah, so that story actually is the most dosed story on AO3. It's like I still get comments every now and again that are like, "Oh, this was so cute," or the Twitter thing where they
Yeah.
their face on the keyboard, then say, "This was so cute"
Key
with like
smash.
random capitalization. Yeah,
OMFG.
pretty much stuff like that. It attracts that crowd. So I hate that story. Not because of them at all. I just was never satisfied with it, and I hate having a story up that I'm not happy with. Even Dissonance, I'm okay with. But Sweet, despite being like having no typos and having some funny parts that I liked, is super pointless. It wasn't even indulgent for me. I've written stories that were indulgent, but this one just, oh no.
And you know,
All stories I wrote got a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just kind of like I could write stories like these if I really wanted the dopamine rush of all the.
But you
if
wouldn't
you
be
just wanted to
happy
write
doing it.
stories, you'd just churn out stuff like that.
Yeah, but I thought that sounds even more miserable. Getting a bunch of stories like these and just not getting reviews, and then I thought, or just not writing.
And then you
that
never
was
wrote
like-
again.
And I never wrote. That was about
Like Buttercup and the Princess Bride. I will never write again.
movie. Yeah, so that was one of the nails in the coffin was realizing I could be writing different content. But my kind of content that I like is unpopular.
Right.
So I was like, maybe it's just not worth it. I shouldn't worry about it. So, like,
Content could be more popular if the fanfiction.net algorithm wasn't bullcrap. Because I really think that's what it
people had better taste.
is.
No, I'm not wrong. It's them.
Well,
Totally.
'cause,
I get why a story like that, because it's easy to read. It was like 5,000 words. It was fluff. It was a popular ship. Like it's a perfect storm of the kind of story that
Right.
you would think would be popular.
and it's also like, because this is something that I've been talking to my wife about this, about like the differences I see between fanfiction.net and Archive. Key difference with number one, Archive isn't dying. But key difference
depends on
number
the day.
two, Archive is it's not entirely pairing driven, but a lot more fics on Archive I find tend to be pairing driven than I find on fanfiction.
Well,
Or at the very least, a lot more fics on Archive that are readable.
AO3
are
also
pairing
has a
driven.
much better interface for finding stories.
It
Oh,
really does.
Like they
Depressing that you can't tag fanfiction stories with like content
Yeah.
warnings.
have absolutely
AO3 is
nailed that.
dedicated
Well,
for
because they
that.
know their community too. I'm not saying FFnet doesn't, but AO3 is entirely community driven, so it's kind of necessary.
The other big difference I notice is, and I brought this up jokingly, but I'm also kind of serious. I sent this in our regular chat with Jesse and Nick, but I find that a story that falls apart on Archive of Our Own tends to be good for at least 2 or 3 chapters, as opposed to a story on fanfiction.net that falls apart, which usually just falls apart immediately.
It's like as a general rule, happens to be the writers are better on AO3.
Not even that.
I don't know. Maybe it's just the specific like circles I've been floating around.
I think
in.
it's that.
It's. I've been trying to do more stuff on AO3 because a lot of the communities are moving over to AO3 by virtue of it, just the interface being superior. But at the same time, a lot of stuff is still on fanfiction.net. But like using fanfiction.net is a chore.
But the back end on fanfiction is great.
Like I still love the reader, like fanfiction.net's app, which is awful for like 70% of it. But when it comes to the actual reading experience it's great. I love
everything outside of actually scrolling and swiping through chapters is terrible.
Yes, agreed.
But like being able to essentially treat it like an open tab in a browser that saves your place every time you back out, like any other e-reader app, that's great. That's super helpful. I don't have to download the HTML format of a story to my phone to then read it and manually set bookmarks anymore. Which, believe it or not, I did for Into the Outrealms the first time I read it.
Yes.
I think
I remember reading fan fiction on like my iPod Touch too, and like just copy pasting entire fanfiction.net pages into my notepad, so I could read them offline.
Yep, I did that. I think we both did that, like together at the same time in the library in high school.
In the library, in the lunchroom.
Yeah.
Fanfiction.net is some weird, unholy mix of less professional and more professional than AO3.
Yeah.
AO3 does stuff like lets you make custom tags or lets you be more creative with how you format your story. But fanfiction doesn't like it if you just do 2 line breaks in a row. It'll delete one of them.
Yeah.
Well, like
it's like forcing a consistent
experience, and fanfiction.net is just whatever the heck it is.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to enforce like look more professional and to enforce like a standardized stylization of things. So like you can't have more than 1 line break in a row.
But then they go and change their own rules, and it reformats and breaks everything else on the site.
AO3, let's use fucking CSS. Have you seen like some of the crazy things people can do? It blows my mind sometimes.
It's almost like you're on a different webpage entirely sometimes.
Yeah. Many stories I had an idea of writing was going to use a lot of CSS because there's going to be a choose your own adventure story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still bummed I didn't write that, but because I got like way through Act 1, it was going to be a 3-act thing, and I just started to realize how much effort it would have to be. And this was about the time that my interest was dwindling as well. So I was like, this isn't going to happen, unfortunately.
I get exactly what you're saying because I tried to write a choose your own adventure thing once and it was awful.
I even had ways of like, I had a lot of ways of minimizing the workload, like reining in the scale of it.
Mm-hmm.
And even still, I was just like, even if I just wrote this linearly from beginning to end, it would take forever.
You'll get to
there
it
will be variations. Missed that?
I said you'll get to it after you finish Into the Outrealms.
Yeah, sure.
Someday it'll happen. Maybe.
Someday.
No, I just have mad respect for anyone who actually finishes a story. So like the fact that you finished Miracle, big props. The fact that you finished Dissonance, big props. And the fact that me and Nick are still waiting for Dark Lords to end, we're sitting here with like our party poppers. Like
finished every story except for Into the Outrealms that I uploaded. That's like 13 stories or something.
Which is huge.
The sticking point.
Like proportional to the number of stories most people finish.
At 13 out of 14, that's 90+% success rate. I'll take that.
Well, and then even the fact that, like, after the last discussion we had, you went back and took a look at what you had for Chapter 18. You went and posted that. That's insane. Like, I never thought that any of the shit that we were doing would have any sort of influence on anything that we actually looked at and enjoyed.
I hadn't given much, like, critical thought to Miracle in so long. Reading it and, like, hearing y'all echo some points that were my intent when I wrote the story 4.5 years ago.
Mhm.
I was just like, this is incredible. I can't believe what I'm hearing. I'd like to thank you guys again for that. That was, I very much appreciate it. I'm so happy you guys liked my story.
Well, you're very welcome, and we would like to thank you, A, for writing it, B, for putting up with us, and C, for actually coming to talk to us about it afterward.
Twice.
Oh, great. We actually did something right.
I know, right? It's weird. That doesn't ever happen.
It was also my favorite thing we've read so far.
He's very happy with it.
Thank you, Jesse.
When we were talking about meeting up and doing this again, Jesse's first response was, "Oh, awesome! That gives me an excuse to read it again."
Did you? Take that as a no.
I don't know if I heard you because I barely
Sorry,
heard what you
my
said.
internet keeps breaking up.
Anyway, I think that's actually probably a pretty good place to end it.
Yeah.
Thank you once again. Seriously, thank you for doing this not just once but twice.
Thank you so much for having me twice. We talk about myself for hours.
Hey, that's what we're here for. That's why this exists. It's fun.
About yourself and video games and fanfiction.net and archive and
Maybe I'll leave some of that video game discussion in at the end of this.
have fun editing.
Yay!
The full uncut version is on your Patreon.
Yeah, it's on my OnlyFans. The real uncut version. The webcam was on.